What if the most dangerous weapons of a narcissist aren't the rage, the gaslighting, or even the cruelty? What if the real danger lies in the moves that don't look like abuse at all? The quiet tactics, the subtle rewrites, the false empathy that feels almost like care, almost like love, while binding you tighter to the very person who broke you. And that's why they cut the deepest. Because you don't just question them, you question yourself. If you've ever felt like you were finally free, only to find yourself bound again without knowing how it happened, this video is for you. Today, we're exposing the hidden tactics narcissists use to keep control long after you thought you'd escaped. The insidious behaviours that don't just break your trust, they bend your reality. What makes narcissistic control so cunning is not always the rage or the gaslighting. It's the moments that feel like love. Think about this pattern. They hurt you with a cutting remark, a betrayal, or a calculated silence. You break down, you cry, you question yourself. And then, almost as if on cue, they reappear. Soft voice, open arms, a sudden rush of tenderness. They comfort you from the very pain they inflicted. This is not love. It's the reverse rescue trap. On the surface, it looks like remorse, like care. But underneath, it's something far darker. They are positioning themselves as both the cause of your suffering and the only cure for it. They fracture you, and then they bind you back together, on their terms. Psychologically, this is the heart of a trauma bond. Your nervous system can't separate the wound from the relief, so you start associating safety with the very person who keeps you unsafe. They've built a prison with two doors, one marked pain and the other marked comfort, but both lead back to them. Philosophically, this is the trick of the false savior archetype. In myth, it's the deceiver who poisons the well and then sells the antidote. In Jung's language, it's shadow projection with a caretaker's mask. They're not rescuing you, they're deepening your dependency. And here's the cruelest part. It works. For a while, it feels like maybe they do care. Maybe they finally see you. Maybe this is the turning point. But it never is. It's not rescue. It's control wrapped in the costume of compassion. And if you've ever felt that dizzying confusion, crying in their arms, while a quiet voice inside you whispers, "But aren't you the one who broke me?" you know exactly how disorienting this trap is. Because when someone can play both your destroyer and your savior, leaving feels almost impossible. But when even their staged tenderness begins to fray, they don't retreat. They shift. The mask slips into something colder, subtler, a manipulation that looks like recognition, but feels like a mirage. Sometimes the most dangerous manipulation isn't rage at all. It's imitation. Picture this. After weeks of conflict, you finally break. You tell them exactly how much they've hurt you. And for once, they don't argue. They don't shout. Instead, they repeat your pain back to you almost word for word. "I know I ignored you. I know I made you feel invisible. I know you feel like I don't care." For a moment, it feels like relief floods your body. Finally, they understand. Finally, they've heard you. You think, this is it. This is the breakthrough. But something in their eyes doesn't match the words. This is the empathy mirage. They aren't actually feeling your pain, they're performing it. Like an actor memorizing their lines, they've learned the script of empathy without ever embodying its truth. And here's the cruel twist. Because the words sound so right, you doubt yourself. You think, maybe I was too harsh. Maybe they are changing. Maybe I should give this another chance. But real empathy isn't an echo. It's action. It's consistency. It's transformation. Without that, it's nothing more than a mask. This is the trickster archetype in its purest form. The false guide who promises to lead you out of the labyrinth only to circle you back to the same walls. They offer the feeling of being seen without the reality of it, and that is what makes it so effective. It's a counterfeit of connection in the philosophical sense, a reminder that words alone can never carry truth unless they're grounded in being. If you've ever walked away from one of these moments convinced change was coming, only to find yourself back in the same cycle weeks later, you've felt the disorientation of the empathy mirage. It is not empathy. It's another strategy of control, a mirror reflecting your hope back to you until you mistake it for their heart. And when even this illusion begins to crack, they don't stop. They slip into something subtler, colder, a manipulation you may not notice until your own memories feel foreign. Not every manipulation comes as an explosion. Sometimes it comes as a whisper. This is the tactic that leaves survivors most unsettled, because it isn't one event you can point to. It's a slow erosion, a story being retold one fragment at a time until the original truth is gone. At first, it's small, a detail shifted in a memory. That's not how it happened. You're misremembering. Then it's whole chapters. We were never like that. You're exaggerating. Until finally, you wake up months or years later inside a relationship history that no longer matches the one you lived. This is the silent rewrite. Unlike overt gaslighting, which shatters you with obvious denials, this one disarms you with subtle edits. It's not the violent crash of reality, but the quiet reshaping of it. They sand down the edges of your truth until even you begin to doubt. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe I remembered wrong. Maybe the story really is theirs. This is the slow erosion of ego boundaries. Jung wrote of how the self is constantly in tension with forces that try to dissolve it. Here, the narcissist positions themselves as the editor of your psyche, revising your narrative until you live in theirs. And here's the cruel brilliance. You rarely see it happening. Because the edits are so gradual, you only notice when you realize you've been inhabiting their story instead of your own. By then, it feels impossible to return to the raw truth of what you experienced. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. This is the theft of memory, a reminder that control doesn't always look like domination. Sometimes it looks like authorship. Whoever tells the story owns the meaning. And when reality itself bends too far to hold, they reach for another weapon. Not overt control this time, but a slower domination, one disguised as help, competence, even generosity. At first, it feels generous. They step in to fix the bills, organize the trip, handle the details. You think, maybe they're just better at this than me. Maybe I should be grateful. But over time, the pattern reveals itself. Their help always carries a subtle undertone. Don't worry, I'll handle it. You'd just mess it up anyway. This is weaponized competence. What looks like care is really a slow construction of dependency. By taking over, they don't just control the task. They control the narrative about who you are. You become the one who can't, the one who doesn't know, the one who would be lost without them. Psychologically, this tactic exploits the deepest fear many of us carry, the fear of inadequacy. They don't need to rage or gaslight if they can convince you you're incapable. It's a quiet erosion of confidence, disguised as protection. Philosophically, it's a trap of power dressed as service. Nietzsche warned of those who help not to serve, but to dominate, whose gift is really a chain. What seems like generosity is actually control, binding you in invisible contracts you never signed. And here's the sting. You may even find yourself defending them to others. Yes, they can be controlling, but they do so much for me. That's the genius of this mask. It rewrites exploitation as care. But control doesn't stop at your private world. When dependency isn't enough, they step onto a stage, and suddenly, the cruelty you know in the dark transforms into a flawless performance of kindness before others. Some wounds don't come from what others see. They come from what no one else ever will. This is the cruelty of the audience effect. In public, they shine. Polite, humble, attentive. They compliment you. They laugh with your friends. They play the role of the devoted partner or the generous friend. People look on and think, what a wonderful person. You're lucky to have them. But behind closed doors, the mask drops. The warmth becomes withdrawal. The attentiveness becomes criticism. The subtle put-downs, the private coldness, the invisible cuts, all saved for when no one else is watching. And when you try to explain it, you're met with disbelief. Really? Them? They've always been so kind. Suddenly, you're cast as the difficult one, the ungrateful one, maybe even the unstable one. The abuse is invisible to everyone but you. This is a devastating double bind, because the more they perform goodness in public, the more isolated you feel in private. Your truth becomes unspeakable, trapped behind the wall of their perfect performance. Here, it's the archetype of the trickster again, a chameleon shifting colors depending on the light. To the world, they are virtue incarnate. To you, they are the slow erosion of your spirit. And here's the darkest part. The more convincing their public mask, the crazier you feel for even questioning it. This is why so many survivors whisper, "No one will ever believe me." And when their mask dazzles the world, but no longer holds you, they reach for a final lure, not rooted in today, but in tomorrow. A glittering promise designed to keep you tethered to a future that never comes. This is the future hook, the glittering bait of tomorrow, designed to keep you trapped today. You say you're leaving, and suddenly they're talking about marriage. You pull away, and they promise a trip, a home, a dream you've been carrying in your heart. They sketch visions of the life you always wanted, a life they never had any intention of building, except as a leash. Psychologically, this is intermittent reinforcement at its sharpest. You suffer through cycles of pain, but the promise of relief, even if it never comes, is enough to keep you tethered. It's not the present that holds you. It's the idea of the future. They are masters of the age-old trap of illusion. Plato warned that most of us live in shadows, mistaking them for reality. The narcissist uses this very dynamic, offering you a shadow of tomorrow, so you'll ignore the darkness of today. And here's the heartbreak. You start bargaining with yourself. Maybe if I wait a little longer. Maybe this time they mean it. Maybe things really will change. But tomorrow never arrives. It's always one step away, always just enough to keep you waiting. But when even the lure of the future can't hold you, when you start slipping from their grasp, despite all the promises, they reveal one of their most insidious tactics of all. They won't come at you directly. Instead, they'll come through others. When all else fails, when rage, rescue, promises and performances no longer work, they find another way to make you pay. Not through their own hands, but through others. This is proxy punishment. Instead of screaming at you directly, they whisper to your children, planting seeds of doubt about who you are. Instead of confronting you, they quietly poison colleagues, friends, or even family against you. You stop receiving invitations, people turn cold, and suddenly you're defending yourself against battles you never even started. And when you call them out, they shrug. I didn't do anything. They chose that themselves. Plausible deniability, the perfect cover. This is projection turned social. They recruit others to carry out the punishment they can no longer enforce. It's the narcissist's shadow weapon. When they've lost direct control, they still seek indirect power by isolating you. Here, it's the archetype of the tyrant in exile, stripped of the throne, but still scheming in the shadows, using pawns to enforce their will. They no longer have the crown, but they'll try to control the court. And here's the truth survivors often whisper. Proxy punishment cuts deeper than direct abuse. Because it doesn't just harm your relationship with them, it infects the people you love, the spaces you trust, the very fabric of your life. But if you've felt this, if you've watched people you care for turn against you under their influence, you need to know this. It's not proof of your weakness. It's proof of their desperation. Because when they can no longer control you directly, all they have left is sabotage. And that's the moment you know their power is truly slipping. So what happens when the narcissist loses control over you? They may rush in as rescuer. They may mirror empathy like a mask. They may rewrite your story, take over your life, dazzle the crowd, dangle the future, or punish you through the people you love. Each of these tactics feels personal. Each of them feels designed to break you. And in a sense, they are. But here's the truth they'll never tell you. Every desperate move is not a sign of your weakness. It is the sound of their power collapsing. Because the moment you refuse their story, the moment you refuse to be rescued by the hand that wounded you, the moment you see through the mask of empathy, through the promises, through the performances, that's the moment their shadow cracks. Carl Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." That is your liberation. You are not the mask they handed you. You are not the script they wrote. You are the self that survives the distortion. Their shadow is not your destiny. So let me leave you with this. Every time they lose control, you gain clarity. Every time their tactics fail, you step closer to your truth. Every time their mask slips, you remember who you are without it. Write this in the comments so it sinks deeper into you. I choose what I become. And remember, the collapse of their control is not your ending. It is your beginning. You've lived the patterns. You've seen the mask. What part of the story still needs to be exposed? Drop it in the comments. Your insight shapes what we uncover next. We're building this together.